There's some like rumbling.
Oh, that's my fan. I'm gonna try. Also, I love. Welcome to the broadcast, everybody.
Oh, we are now live. So thanks for everyone for joining us. Really excited about the event. We're just getting things started a little bit. My name is Christopher Soto, and I'm on the board of directors with Lambda Literary. I'm really excited to be presenting this or introducing this event with Jacob and Chani. Thank you both for being here. I've written a quick introduction. It's on another tab, so I'll read that and then I'll step out of the way. All right, here we go. Thanks for joining us for an evening with Jacob Tobia and Chani Nicholas. I'm Christopher Soto, and I'm thrilled to be your host for another event of Lambda Literary Does Pride, a series of readings and discussions with a few of our beloved literary friends. To see Lambda's full list of events, visit our website at lambdaliterary.org. For over 30 years, Lambda Literary has fought for the belief that LGBTQ literature is fundamental to the preservation of our community and that queer life is affirmed when our stories are written, published, and read. Lambda Literary is the nation's de facto home for LGBTQ writers. We serve thousands of writers and books and book lovers every year through a range of programs that serve queer book lovers of all ages. Since 1989, we've celebrated the best in LGBTQ books through the Lambda Literary Awards. We also bring our books into classrooms so that kids, especially queer and trans youth, can see themselves reflected in the books they read in school. We prepare future generations of queer and trans writers by offering the only writing residency in the world exclusively for emerging LGBTQ writers. Our work is only possible through the generous support of people like you, which is why I ask that you can make a donation to Lambda Literary tonight by visiting lambdaliterary.org/donate. Just like many people and organizations, the COVID-19 pandemic has had an enormous impact on Lambda. And this June, we need to raise an additional $25,000 to continue our work throughout the year ahead. Please help us ensure that Lambda Literary can continue to respond creatively and powerfully as we move through this tumultuous time. Even giving as little as $10 ensures that we can keep bringing you programs like tonight's in the months and years ahead. You can contribute to our work at any point tonight by clicking the donate button at the bottom of your screen or by visiting lambdaliterary.org. With that, I'll introduce my guest and then here are some bios. Jacob Tobia is an actor, writer, producer, and author of the national best-selling memoir, Sissy, A Coming of Gender Story. Heralded by Deadline as an unprecedented move towards an authentic representation and inclusion, Jacob made their television debut as the non-binary character Double Trouble in Netflix's She-Ra and the Princess Power. From interviewing former US presidents to giving Trevor Noah an on-air makeover on The Daily Show, Jacob helps others embrace the full complexity of gender and owning their truth, even when that truth is as messy as hell. Originally from Raleigh, North Carolina, Jacob currently lives in LA. Chani Nicholas is a writer, is a Los Angeles-based New York Times bestselling astrologer and author of You Were Born for This, Astrology for Radical Self-Acceptance. She has been a counseling astrologer for more than 20 years, guiding her community of over 1 million monthly readers to discover and live out their life's purposes through understanding their birth chart. She's been featured in the New York Times, LA Times, Rolling Stone, The New Yorker, Atlantic, and on Netflix. Okay, now I'm gonna try and figure out how to close me out. And thank you both so much.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction, Christopher. I've known Christopher for a minute now. And the last time we did an event in public, Chani, Christopher was doing poetry at the Broad, and I was carrying, it was like, there's obviously like a sort of dance type part with it. And Christopher was up on a giant ladder that was a little scary. And then we were all carrying tulle like out into the audience, like giant, like 40-foot long pieces of like blush tool.
I love.
So it's
Back
fun
in the day.
Yeah. I'm also stoked to be chatting with you because I feel like I was joking earlier. I was like, we're just basically doing what we do anyway, just like chatting on the internet, but via a face thing, except this time I'm going to try to be like 30% less messy.
Let's see.
So do we want to start off by doing some little readings, make it a little literary salon?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to go first? I can't remember what we
do.
decided.
I want you to go
I'll
first.
go first.
Okay.
So I'm going to be reading from my book, Sissy, in case I haven't held it up again. And I was trying to think about what I wanted to read today. And I decided I wanted to read from the section about, because I remember when I sat down to write, I mean, one of the things that was really beautiful about writing a memoir is that I got the chance to tell the story without as many abbreviations. There are still some abbreviations, but there aren't as many. And the thing that was really lovely is that I didn't have to shy away from any of the phases of my identity development, right? Like I was allowed to give them all a little room to breathe. So I could like talk about the period of my life where I was like, yeah, I'm a gay boy, you know, and understood myself in that way and honor that without having to worry that it would somehow contradict the story that came later or like confuse people or anything like that. And so this chunk comes from that period of time. It's the top of chapter 4 in my book, entitled A Very Dramatic First Coming Out. For queer and trans people, life in the closet can be nasty business. It's not just the experience of withholding your identity from people you love, living a half-truth while you navigate the world as someone else that is traumatic. It's also the way we talk about the period of our lives, the limiting metaphors we use to structure our self-knowledge. As a kid, I didn't pause for a moment to think about whether the metaphor of the closet worked for me. I took the closet as a shameful, for granted part of my epistemological reality. But what's obvious to me now, as an adult, is that this metaphor doesn't allow young queer people to have empathy for ourselves when we aren't yet ready to proclaim our identities to the world. I've come to loathe the idea of, quote, coming out of the closet. There's something about its black or white, in or out nature that rubs me the wrong way. Thanks to many queer theory classes in college and the brilliant work of writers like Eve Sedgwick, I'm starting to imagine other narrative possibilities. Instead of the closet, I'd like to propose a more humane metaphor. What if we talk about queer and trans people coming out of our shells? When you think about it, us queers are a lot like garden snails anyway. We love flowers, we have beautiful curly shells, we are slimy sometimes and understand the power of proper lubrication. We leave a shiny, glittery trail wherever we go. And did you know that most snails are gender neutral and play both male and female roles in procreation? They're verse. That many snails change gender multiple times throughout the course of their lives? More important, when you fuck with a snail, when you make it feel like it's in danger, it'll go right back into its shell. It will protect itself. You'll no longer be able to see its gorgeous, glistening, alien-like body, only a hard shell of its former self. When a person hides in the closet, we act as if it is their responsibility to come out. But when a snail hides in its shell, we don't delegate responsibility the same way. A snail only hides in its shell because the world outside feels hostile. Also, my neighbor is now yelling at her dogs to pee out the backyard of our building. And I just feel I need to name it so you know what it is, just so you know, because otherwise it sounds strange. When a person hides in the closet, we act as if it is their responsibility to come out. But when a snail hides in its shell, we don't delegate responsibility the same way. A snail only hides in its shell because the world outside feels hostile. If a snail recoils at the sight of you, it's not because the snail is cowardly or lying or deviant or withholding. It's because you've scared it. When queer people hide our identities, it's not because we are cowardly or lying or deviant or withholding. It's because the world and people around us felt predatory, because someone scared us, intentionally or unintentionally, and we were trying to protect ourselves. Like snails, we too are defensive. And I'll just leave it there. That's a good little nugget.
I love.
Yeah, and you go.
Well, what I think is fascinating for me in terms of what you just read And in terms of what I know about your astrological chart, which you've been so generous as to share with us today, is that the symbol for Cancer is a crab that has a hard shell.
Right.
And is known for its defensiveness because it's so incredibly vulnerable. And so, Jacob, you have a Cancer moon.
I did know that.
You did, yeah.
I did, yes.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things about a Cancer moon is that it's incredibly powerful because it's in its own sign. It's kind of like when we're in our own shell, we're comfortable. We know the parameters, we know the feeling of it, we know the safety of it, we understand the functionality of it. And so we can navigate around it really easily. And the whole like way in which you talk about having that kind of shell is really powerful because the potency of your chart, one of the things that's really potent about your chart is that ability to relate to folks emotionally. So Cancer wants to initiate feeling. It wants you to feel something. It's not just here to give facts and data. It's here to create some sort of emotional bond. And so that is one part of your chart that functions really strongly. You've actually got a lot of things in your chart that belong in this, that are in the signs that they're strongest in. So on one hand, just looking at your chart is like, oh, wow, there's just a ton of resources available here. Not to say there's not complications and there's situations, but
you see how the sun just went behind a cloud and like the whole mood just changed. It turned into like a moody firelight chat as you said that.
But you have an incredible amount available to you in an astrological sense. So there's that piece of it. But if I, well, maybe I'll start with the moon since you talked about the shell. So I'll read a little bit of my book as it relates to your chart. So now we hear the artist, we see the artist, and now we're going to witness them through their chart. So you can tell me.
And before you do, can you remind me sort of like how, like remind everyone else how your book works? So sort of like the mechanics of the thing, because I feel like that's helpful. Also, like the sun came back out.
Yeah. So the book is like, you can go pull up your chart and then you can read about the different key factors of your chart. One of which is the moon. So we want to look at the ascendant, the ruler of the ascendant, the sun, and the moon is the starting point, the access point for understanding our chart. So it's not just about the sign that the planet is in, it's really about where it is and how it's relating to other things. But if we do just start with the sign, then the moon is the way in which we relate to the body and everyday life. Right. And it's the way in which we take care of ourselves and want to be taken care of. It's kind of part of our self-care language, or it is part of our self-care language. So okay, I won't get ahead of myself. So, okay, moon in Cancer. In Cancer, in its own sign, the moon feeds the masses. Here, the moon is strong, extreme in its significations, and undeniable in its power. The moon in Cancer needs to nourish others as much as others need its nourishment. To feel safe in the world, moon in Cancer develops emotional bonds. In many cases, ones that feel like family. Security comes through connection to others, but can also come at a cost. This moon can lose itself in the role of caretaker, forgetting that its own needs are as valid as anyone else's. Extremely sensitive, empathic, and intuitive, you will pick up on and most likely hold the unprocessed emotions of others. Learning to release the energy that you have absorbed from others is a life-saving tactic. Moodiness is often the marker of having lost one's emotional boundary. To regulate, you will likely need a safe place to call home. A shell to crawl back into.
Hey, it's like we planned it.
a sanctuary in which to cleanse yourself and the residue of human suffering. Since the moon is in its place of power, there may be an experience of ease or abundance on the material plane, especially in regard to the house that it's placed in. But this is such a dominant placement, you may also feel more resonance with your moon than your sun. Issues related to the moon in general, feeding, caring for, caring about, being cared for, bonding, writing, and moving about the world may feature prominently in your life. With this placement, it's common to have experienced a parent or caregiver as extremely nurturing, comforting, or emotionally suffocating. Depends. A Cancer moon can indicate a parent or caregiver who is a dominant figure in your development. We can say this about all caregivers, but if you have a Cancer moon, you may feel particularly tied to the lessons and teachings you received from them. So one of the markers is like emotional sensitivity and an ability to, again, enact and help other people feel. So would you say that in your writings and in your talks and in all the information that you give out, that is something that you're known for, or that you feel like you're good at, or that you feel like you're going for it all?
I mean, absolutely. Like, I feel like that kind of hits the nail on the head in terms of what makes me deeply sad and drives me wild. Like the sort of like over empathizing, but needing it to be like a really shared experience. Yeah. And I think it's, you know, and I'm sure that this applies to so many people, but what it really made me think about was kind of two things. One, kind of in relationship to the general world, like the thing I really struggle with about the digital world that we're in right now is that you don't get to actually really feel that empathetic connection with people. You don't get to, you know, it's like you put work out into the world, and you know in your head abstractly that there is that on the other side of that work, other people are like feeling it and holding it, and there is real connection to it, but you don't get to be party to witnessing that. And in some ways, the same thing is true with memoir. And it's actually, I mean, you and I have talked about this, right? We have talked about the fact that putting out a memoir has actually been much more painful than I anticipated. Because, and part of that pain for me is not anticipating or not realizing that I wouldn't be able to feel others connect to my book.
Yeah.
That you do this beautiful, emotive, incredible work. I mean, well, I shouldn't use for me, the experience of writing it was incredible, right? The experience of putting it together was beautiful. Like, you can judge whether or not you think the book is beautiful on your own, because this is a very literary and discerning audience. But like, you know, the process of putting it together was really bountiful and emotional in that way. And then you put it out into the world, and the way that you're allowed connection with others, you don't get to feel that kind of, or there are less moments where you feel that warmth than when you kind of abstractly look at like numbers or these kind of like things on a screen. And so it makes it really difficult to function in those kinds of ways. And yet it is also like a beautiful gift when it's not busy sabotaging me. You know?
So one of the asteroids that's right by your Leo sun, which is very different than Cancer moon, right?
Also, I love how deep your astrology is. You're like, I know about the asteroids. Like I know about specific
I
asteroids.
am a professional, Jacob.
You're like, I'm gonna get to the Kuiper belt soon. I'm just not quite, we haven't mapped it out very well yet, but eventually we're gonna get to all the like exoplanets, and I'm gonna know about them too. Okay,
wait, I just have to say this. You have Sun in Leo, which I can read from the book, but Sun in Leo is also very powerful. Sun belongs in Leo. Leo is all about shining, needing praise, needing to perform.
The
curse. Needing to be center stage.
I hate it.
Attention. You have the Sun next to Jupiter, which is like one of the best setups you can have. It gives this incredible like ability to be big and boisterous and take up space and like project a really kind of like big vision, big positive energy. You have a fire sign for a rising sign, you Sag rising. It's all, your chart is like all, besides your Cancer moon that can get super emo and all the things.
It's like the thing
really
that makes you cry at night.
Yeah, it's like needy and like and like wants to like have family and cuddle with everybody. the rest of your chart is like incredibly enthusiastic and all about like inspiration and like, oh, I feel like doing this, I'm gonna go do this, and then over here and over here. It's just like all inspiration and creativity. And so there's so much like abundance, and like you have an incredible blessing that surrounds your sun that makes you really honestly quite lucky. And right next to that is the asteroid Sisyphus. Does that resonate at all?
I don't, like a little, okay, fine. Okay, sure. I'm like, of course they had to name that asteroid Sisyphus just to really do it.
But I want to emphasize how incredibly like emboldened and strengthened your chart is, because you have like some of the
also
luckiest.
Sisyphus, like Sisyphus. Like I think I should have, if I had really thought about it, maybe my like next book will just be called Sisyphus. Like it'll be about like
binary is a Sisyphus.
Yeah, like you're just about rolling. We're just like rolling. It's like undoing the work of the gender binary is just rolling a boulder up a hill forever.
Yes.
I mean, that's what undoing oppression is, right? You're just always rolling a boulder.
Yeah, you cannot be in it for yourself, for your generation even. You can't be in it for the immediate gratification of it. There isn't any. Or there might be some, but it's not where the party's at.
Right.
So anyways.
You know the other vibe I'm getting from this combination of things, and you know, you can what this says about me, I don't know. But I was just sort of like, yeah, it feels like, you know, that a song that resonated with me very much as a child and then stopped resonating and then now resonates as an adult. Is that song Lucky by Britney Spears? Do you know this song?
Oh
It's like from her early thing. The song is just like, she's so lucky, she's a star, but she cries in her lonely heart, thinking, if there's nothing missing in my life, then why do these tears come at night? Anyway, I was like, I feel like that is like such an encapsulation of this chart. And the music video is just all about like Britney being a star, and then like the camera crew goes away, and she's just like, but wait. Also, I'm seeing we have like, a lot of Britney. Yeah. We have a lot of fans, like a lot of folks who are also fans of that song. And thank you, Carolyn, as well as Susanna and Bronwyn. I feel seen by y'all right now.
You also have a really like great cluster of planets in Virgo in your 10th house of career, which makes you a phenomenal critic and also thinker and speaker and someone who's able to like take all the info and sift through it and digest it for people and put it out in a way that's really useful. Like there's a big signature of being somebody who wants to make information practically applicable in people's lives. So that's and also the hypercriticality of it when turned inwards can be really too like, it's like exfoliating in a way that leaves one raw. Right. But the gift is your discernment, your ability to like parse out the truths and arguments and to weave together what you find to be useful about a certain system or set of, you know, like pieces of information. And I think that you do that so beautifully. Your way with words and your way of breaking down really big concepts that we're all like fish swimming in, and being able to parse out and be really particular and very specific about the kind of information that you're giving and the ways in which you're making your arguments or you're constructing your narrative or putting something together is always so useful, I think. Like I find your posts and your writing incredibly helpful and clarifying. And that's like one of the main marks of your career.
And I mean, it's the other thing that's really resonating with me in what you're saying is I feel like a lot of this calls out, as you're naming like attributes, I'm thinking about the things I've learned about myself that I've learned to protect myself from. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like the barriers that I've had to put up, right? Like one is around criticism, right? Like I can't read criticism just like as a human being. Like I just can't do it because because intellectually I get it, right? But emotionally I can't hold that. And I've never been able to hold that very well. And I've always just been like, wait, why is everyone being so mean to one another? Like I don't like even just, the field of like, I mean, I get like criticism, because it can also hold like deconstructing different people's ideas and kind of and examining them, right? And criticism as examination, I can hold. That's fun. I enjoy doing that and being like, let's think about what's going on here. But criticism as taking someone down is something that's always been really difficult for me to hold because I get it and it hurts other parts of me. So like this sort of like the idea that can turn inward really easily and that and I think this is true for so many people, right? Like we don't feel like the million compliments. We feel the one jab. You don't feel the million people who are just like if 100 people say I loved it and one person's like it was a little vain, you're like, oh no, right? Oh no, I'm vain.
But I'm a Leo.
Right. One thing that my brother
did you want?
Right. I mean, that's the other thing is sometimes I want to just put like a disclaimer, like on the cover of my book, like Leo, Sun, Cancer, Moon, like it's going to be mopey and attention seeking. If you don't like that, it's okay. Just, it's, I'm aware of who I am.
It's Sisyphus.
Right. My fucking brother. So I don't read my Goodreads page because I think as an author, it's probably just good to not touch it.
Don't do it.
Everyone knows. I think that's what everyone knows.
Yeah.
I think I did it like once in a moment of weakness and then never again. And I've been very good at maintaining that boundary. Pat on the back for me, proud of myself for doing my mental health stuff. But my brother, of course, like doesn't know. He's like super chill and like he's a badass mountain man in Asheville, and he doesn't like know the rules around like you don't mention a Goodreads to an author, just period. You just don't speak the word Goodreads to an author. You just sort of let it. And he was like, what he said to me, he was like, your Goodreads. It's funny because all the things people are criticizing you for are just like who you are.
Thanks so much.
And I was like, Matt. And he was like, well, I mean, like, of course, like you are a little self-congratulatory. And I was like, yeah, I know that. And he was like, yeah, and you're also like a little egotistical and arrogant. Sometimes I was like, correct. It's a defense mechanism because of trauma. Yes, I know this. And he was like, and sometimes you like to make raunchy low-level jokes because they're fun. And I was like, yeah, I know. And so it was really funny because I felt like, I don't know how we got to this topic, but I feel on the topic of criticism.
Well, I think it's interesting though, because your chart, there is like this, when you have Jupiter, the planet, the biggest planet in our solar system, the planet that's all about faith and expansion and abundance and enthusiasm, next to your sun, which is your identity, in Leo, which is about self-expression and here I am. There is this natural way in which that if you have that setup, you have to, it's in the 9th house of publishing and being out in the world and traveling and philosophy and theory. It actually, you could, with that kind of chart, you could be like a pastor. I don't know what they're called.
I'd be a great cult leader.
Yes, you would.
I've always thought that maybe I should start a cult or like at least a church.
I mean, something, but it's like definitely like spiritual leader kind of
Right. It's why I love the church growing up, because the modality of the thing is what I connected with. Right.
Yes.
The like theology.
But somebody who wants to take up that much space and to be that big and then be that sensitive. That's like the crux of your chart.
Right. And it's like a recipe, and it's a recipe for disaster, but it's a disaster that luckily.
But it's also, but the sensitivity allows you to connect to people. And I have a similar thing where my chart, my career thing wants to be like so big and so out. And then personally, I just like shudder and am like appalled by that thing in me that wants to do that. So as big as I expand, I contract as much.
How is that structured like in your astrological signs?
Well, it's more about like planets. So I have like a Saturn. You have Jupiter sun, which is like big and bold, brash. I have that, but then I also have Saturn sun, which is like, who the fuck do you think you are? It's like
it's like really critical and like
it really strangles. Like I really have to fight against it. But it's a whole it's what gives me the dynamic to make me go out and do it.
Right.
It's the fight in the chart.
Yeah.
So and I feel it internally. So when I realized it in my chart, I was like, oh, that's why I'm so compelled to do that thing, to go big. And then I also retract so much from that exposure. And in a way, it's yours is set up in a different way, but your Cancer moon is it'll just absorb everything.
Right.
And so it needs that shell. It really, like when you wrote about that, it really does need that. It needs some sort of defense because it's too sensitive. And your moon's also in the 8th house, which makes it very close to the grief and sorrow of life. Like it's like deep feeling in there. But your sun in Jupiter is like,
is it like,
and another thing.
Can you, okay, so wait, can you, let me, am I summarizing correctly to say that like, the way that this whole thing is set up, and I could relate all the specific things, is like, I'm set up to like want to go out onto a stage naked and bemoaning the state of the world and trying to fix it. And then about 15 minutes in, I realize that I am naked and crying and feel like, oh no, what did I just do? But
like really entertainingly.
Yeah, like the nakedness is part of the giggling. Yeah, it's like a comedy bit.
Like, and with a lot of buoyancy and a lot of like Jupiter is also the joker. It's the wisdom holder, but also like it's the big cosmic joke. So there is an abundance of really, it's your chart. It's like it's a big signature of needing to be generous in terms of your understanding and the ways in which you teach. So, okay, wait, what were you going to say?
Oh, yes. No, do you want to read something else?
Well, your sun in the 9th house. So just to contrast so it's a Leo sun. So it's all about expressing oneself and getting, one of the cruxes of Leo is that you need so one of the affirmations I wrote is, I am allowed to love the applause I receive. I honor my energy by finding ways to joyfully express it on the stages that are most appreciative of it. Where in life do you feel applauded, appreciated, and recognized for your gifts? Do you admonish yourself for needing applause and appreciation from others? If so, why? Okay.
Yeah, those are
not a big deal. Sun in the 9th house. The 9th house is known as traditionally known as the house of God, since the sun was seen as God and the moon as goddess, which is why the 3rd house stood up. The 9th house is the house of the sun's joy. Having your sun here gives it a special quality and strength. The 9th house is the house of spirituality, religion, philosophy, higher education, publishing, long distance travel, and long-term plans. With your sun in the 9th house, you might need to find ways to express yourself through exploring the world. Any work that takes you on international adventures or into contact with other cultures and geographies is a natural fit. That said, it's a mistake to think that sun here yearns only for physical exploration. It also seeks to travel far and wide philosophically. You might have the qualities, if not the title, of spiritual guide, educator, leader, or publisher.
Well, I'm certainly not a publisher.
But you're a published author.
Right. I'm just making that was just a like lit industry joke. You want to know one thing I love about astrology, especially the way that you do it? I love that astrology is so like that when you do it right, because I feel like a lot of times when people approach astrology, they're like, oh, but like it tells everyone that they're like special. Like everyone gets that they're special. And I'm like, well, duh. Like it's very socialist in its ethos in that way, right? Like it's very like, it's like, yes, everyone is special and like uniqueness is uniqueness and it's gorgeous and exploring it for yourself is valuable, right? Like, and I think that the way that it is so shared, and that like the unique positioning is what gives each person kind of like the beautiful access to it. Is such a strength rather than like, I feel like a lot of times when people like, want to be like, oh, it's just, I mean, it tells everyone that they're special. And I'm like, well, that's part of the point, right? Like there's no such thing as a boring. Part of the point is that
there's a mark in the moment anything is born and that there's a potential in that. So for you to have someone that has sun in the 9th house, there's got to be some sort of exploration that's key and central to your life. So it's either educational, philosophical, literal travel, publishing as a way that we like put ourselves out into the world. But there's a need to be in contact with something that feels really expansive and far reaching. And that's where you shine and come to life.
I'm realizing that we have a question from the audience, and it's for you, so I can ask it, which is, Chani, how did writing a book compare to the work you do on a daily basis for readings, horoscopes, etc.?
It was like the shame spirals were deeper, the anxiety was greater, the like, why put something in a book, like when you write online, what's the difference between like what makes writing something in a book make it important? Like, I read that and I'm like, oh, I should have written 17 other things instead of.
Oh my God, totally. I hate rereading my book. I do readings and I'm like,
painful.
I pretend I'm like, oh, this is my lovely work. And I'm reading it being like, that word's wrong. What the fuck? Why did you put that sentence in there? Cut that whole paragraph, idiot. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why did you make that joke? That one doesn't even land. Why did you call it? It's like, I feel like every time I read, I've started just like live editing my own book. Like I'll read it to people. Like this morning I did a different event and I just like straight up changed a few sentences. And I was like, I hope no one's reading along because I'm going to just like make some live edits here. Yeah, I feel you on that.
Because everything is so, I mean, it's torturous to put something like, why am I going to kill trees and be part of capitalism? Like, what is what I'm writing that important to be part of that? So you kind of write, for me, it's like I have to write stuff to get it out and just to like have it somewhere and then be able to move on. So I had to think of the book like, I have to put this down somewhere and then I can go do other things.
Right. I also really hold books, like the physical object of books. I really hold them as kind of like that their physical quality is something of a talisman, like it's like actually like the physical object itself holds something for you, right? Because like in a digital world, there's like, it's like you read something that you love and you're like, okay, whatever. And then it floats away and you can look it up, but it's not like, whereas like when you read a book that you love and then you put it back on your shelf, like it's there to always sort of look at you day by day, to be with you and to like continue bringing that energy back to you in a way that like bookmark web browsers don't quite have the same effect. There's something magical to books that I think is often underrated. And that's why I love like really old books. That's why I was like when we were doing my hardcover, I was like, I want the lettering on the spine to be gold, like an old ass book. like on the actual hard object of it, like under the jacket.
Underneath. Yeah.
Let's see. I think we have like 10 more minutes to sort of chit chat.
Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, if folks want to ask more questions, you can either do it in the chat window because we can see that, or there's the ask a question feature where you can just like type it in, if you'd like. Otherwise, I'm happy to keep discussing and asking questions of my own. Well, we'll wait. If one comes up, we'll jump on it when it comes in. I think that I think we've both had quite an experience with navigating publishing as there's another question coming in, but I just want to finish this thought with like navigating publishing as queer folks who have to kind of go up against an industry that is still fairly rooted in a kind of old school modality, and I think like that's one of the reasons why I really value the work that Lambda does, because I feel like in addition to cultivating queer and trans writers and giving space for that kind of cultivation, which like that's the work of Lambda that I love most. It also really helps to ensure that like that queer and trans literature and queer and trans books are like continue to be elevated and considered like an integral part of the publishing landscape. Because I think it's easy to take it for granted that that's true, but really like you have to have organizations reminding people that that's true, like because the existence of an organization itself means something, right? Like it signifies to everybody, you better keep publishing this stuff because we're not going anywhere, because we care about this, and this matters in iterations. This matters for decades. This isn't just a short-term thing. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like you and I have this very special connection. Like, I feel like there's a special connection that I have with all my author friends after their work comes out. Like, and before their work comes out, I'm like, girl, like I want to love you, and I do love you, but like we're gonna really love each other after your book comes out, because then we'll be able to like get into it together.
There's no way I could have survived writing and publishing a book without writer friends.
Yeah.
Like I had so many people hold me through the process and be like, you have to fight for this. You have to, you know, don't let this go. And the people that looked at I mean, it's just like, it's really truly takes a village to get anything out. And it feels so like self-important and whatever to say, because you're like, okay, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. But I think what it takes to put something out into the world in physical form is so different than putting something out online. I don't know. It really tripped me out.
Edit it.
I know.
It's like sitting on a shelf and I'm like, dang it, I don't like that one word in there. And I, and you're like,
you have to trust.
Right.
You have to have faith that the process was what it needed to be. And then you just like let it go and move on.
Right. So we have two more questions. One is, and I'll let you pick which one we want to start on.
Okay.
So one is, Chani, can you talk about eclipse season and how it is impacting us, especially through COVID and civil rights? And then the other question is, do you each have ideas for your next book?
Do you have ideas for your next book, Jacob?
I've been thinking a lot about desire and the line between dysphoria and dysmorphia, and how trans femininity has, in moments, rendered me kind of unintelligible or illegible as an object of desire for people. And so I feel like, you know, there's a way in which Sissy felt like a book that was just like my heart was just demanding that it be written. My heart was like, you must like for yourself, you must do this work. Right? Like reception of the book be damned, for yourself, you must do this work. You must put this on the page. You have to get this out of your head and into some concrete form, because I spent my whole life being told that my gender is fake, right? I spent my whole life being gaslit by people, and my heart just was screaming like, you must put this in on the page, and you have to publish it in book form, because then it's printed and then it can't be erased, but for, you know, a profound historical events, right? Because we do know that trans and queer books can be erased, but it takes a lot. And it felt like this thing where I had to get it out in order to in some ways move beyond it, but also also to sort of make a part of myself real and sort of claim it as real in perpetuity in this way that would allow me to then think about who else am I and what else do I have to say. And now I'm just spending a lot of time thinking about erotics and erotic power and erotic capital and dysmorphia and dysphoria and why we hate our bodies the way we hate them, and when we love our bodies the way we love them, and all of that.
Did writing the book and publishing it change your relationship to your own desire? No. It didn't, it's partially because I didn't really wade too far into it in the book. Well, the only thing that it did change actually was that it made me, because I feel like this question of what's next, what else are you thinking about is common. And it helped me realize, like, the first time I got asked that question, I was just kind of like, I don't know. And it was like at my book event in New York, like at the launch. And I was like, I hadn't thought too much about it. And then you know, and then the Alan Cumming, who was hosting it, was like, so what do you think about writing next? And I was like, yeah, I think I just need to write a book about how I need to get laid and would like a partner. And if anyone's interested, like, call me, I guess.
because I like have attained this like major life thing of putting out a book and whatever, and then like on the other end I'm like, yeah, and I'm going home alone and like have never had a partner like ever, and have all this kind of unmanifested like sexual and erotic power and desire and ability that I just haven't even learned to tap into because I didn't know how to prioritize it. Because my gender exploration, and this is something that people don't say, but has absolutely been true in my life, is that my gender exploration came at the cost of my sexuality and my sensuality, right? Because I put myself outside of desirability by expressing my femme and by being willing to adorn my body the way that I adorn it, and by being willing to sort of to inhabit a gender that I know is deeply desired, but is unwilling, but whose desire is so often unwilling to be named. And so there's this way in which.
So, but you didn't put it at risk. The world did.
Yes, right. I didn't do that. Like the world did that. But it's interesting because I feel like now there's this way that my heart is calling for balance, right? Where it's like, because this book it ends in a fairly peppy place, right? Of like, you figured out a lot of stuff about yourself, right? I mean, you don't have to figure it out at all. But growth is a process, but you got to a place. And I think that there's now this part of my heart that's saying, yes, and at what cost? Maybe you need to tell people more about the cost of it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, the cost that the world demands, the fee that the world demands from you.
Right. Also,
which
this is a great
still doesn't, to me, I'm just like, that's not a reason to not be love all the things.
Right.
Also, I just want to say, like, I was very single and very lonely for up until the end of my 30s.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
I'm the screen that popped up. Hello again.
This is a great time for you to pop in, Christopher. We talk about this shit all the time. I talk about a ton about my just lonely ass self.
Yeah, that's 90%.
I was so lonely.
Oh, our next conversation about love and desire. You can.
Yes.
I know we've gone over the time a little bit. There's a couple of questions. I don't know if you wanted to address them really quickly or if we can pass on them. I just want to respect people's times for Chani. Do we feel
what were the questions? There was one question that was a little too big to answer.
Oh, the one about the eclipse season impacting everything?
I'm going to leave that. Sorry.
That's fair. It's a giant question.
Yeah.
But it does affect it.
Was there anything else?
And the other was about the next book.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and that would be.
Oh, I was like, how dare you ask me about the next book when anybody asked me about the next book? I've got a lot of other stuff coming out. Like I was supposed to come out in 2020 and then 2020 had its way. I was like trying to find like the tiny little slices of decent astrology of this year because this year's astrology is so horrendous. And I was like, okay, I'm going to launch this thing here and that thing there. And then so most of the things I'm going to launch will come out in 2021.
Right.
Or the end of 2020. So a book is not one of those things at this point, but my wife and I talk about co-writing something that has to do about abundance, abundance in a anti-capitalist, the kind of new world order type of abundance. But we're very much about like how do we create generative networks of generativity and growth and all of that. So we think about that often.
Y'all could also write a book called How to Have a Cool Fucking Relationship.
Instant bestseller.
Oh, yeah. She was lucky. We met when she was 26.
Right.
So she got the lucky end of that.
Right. You had to endure the years of drought.
I'm way older than her. So
right.
It's like, oh my God.
Thank you both so much for being part of this conversation.
Bemoaning on your.
No, it was so beautiful. I'm a shy girl, so I'm a little bit short on words, but it was a really special moment.
Well, thank you, Lambda, for having us. And as someone who used to work in the nonprofit world, don't forget to donate if you can. Lambda's wonderful. Please support their work financially. It's worth it.
Exactly. There's the donate button at the bottom, and then also at lambdaliterary.org/donate. $1, $5, $10, whatever you can do will help save this space for queer and trans writers. All right, hugs and kisses to everyone. Hope you have a good night.
All right, bye y'all.
Take
Mwah.
care.